Happy New Day to the believers. Gonna do a live price commentary this morning and just take a quick minute to read over the risk disclaimer. Gonna pull up the economic calendar, kind of talk about what's on the agenda for today. So it is actually 8:29 a.m. Central Time. At 9 o'clock, Fed Chair Powell is going to be interviewed by the House of Representatives. So some volatility expected with that event. And as far as the rest of the week, he also has another chance to be interviewed tomorrow, and then more inflation related things on Friday. But let's get into the chart real quick. So, being given Nasdaq a little bit more attention. Just want to briefly go through this layout though to kind of see where everything's at. So, dollar currently bullish on the week. It's above the weekly opening price. And then the US stock indices have just been continuing lower since the open, which pretty much began Friday. So looking to see what type of setup may be offered today. Like I said, my main focus is primarily on NASDAQ, which has been finding support at this hourly inefficiency. And then just looking to the right on the daily, the midpoints to these tails down here have been areas that I've been watching. Yesterday, Nasdaq nice bounce off this midpoint of this tail for a retracement higher before so far today seeing nothing but continuation lower. And this is pretty cool though because I was expecting a deep retracement in these assets in particular any week now. And so finally starting to see some weakness being shown in them is a good sign for that deep retracement. No need for me to be in at the top up here because just looking at it from the daily, right, it's been very bullish. So I didn't want to try to force anything. This is the first time in a while, if today closes bearish, that it'll be 3 consecutive bearish days, which could then be a sign that there is potentially a deep retracement coming. It's just being that first sign, that first tipping of the hand by the market of what the upcoming delivery is going to be. And so that's why, like I said, been focusing relatively closely on Nasdaq as opposed to S&P this week. It had been moving the most, and so not anticipating that it's going to drop the quickest or the fastest, but just saying that there's a lot of volatility in this asset as opposed to US 30, for example, still giving a hard time as far as a lot of back and forth. Yes, it was still bullish, and then even with the weakness right now, definitely showing the most weakness, leaving this inefficiency here so far on the daily. See, there's no inefficiency being left on Nasdaq, and then SPX is as well, but it traded up into the high of this weekly inefficiency, and now, well, yesterday had a nice close above the midpoint, but today breaking through that. So I will be looking to see if it has any willingness to get down there. As far as a target, Nasdaq, like I said, these midpoints of these daily tails, and if it wants to get crazy, then this daily level here, and then real quick again the dollar. So this buy side up here, which is basically yesterday's high, inside of this weekly area, which I was willing to offer the dollar index chart the chance to drop down into here and then still find support and run higher. But at this point, since it broke below it and it found support lower, I need to see it work its way at least up into this range and to the midpoint, start to find support around the low or the midpoint for me to start to trust that it may break out of there and then start attacking highs again. It could just consolidate, which is very annoying to me when a dollar does that, but it is what it is. I gotta go by what the analyst in me sees. Can't trade what I want to see. So back to the New York session model. So since the 8:30 open, lots of volatility. I just dropped to the 1 minute just to show. So drop, then immediate run higher inside bar though. As you can see on the 1 minute chart, the high here, the low here. The second candle was completely within that range. So inside bar, Then this candle runs the high but closes back inside the range. Now, this candle, just a lot of volatility, a lot of back and forth, right? So, sell side, yesterday's low, which was created pretty early within the morning session, 1 hour after the 8:30 open, this low had printed and then retraced back into the range, never taking out the high for the day or going any higher, but there was reason for it to not get any higher. Lots of areas of potential resistance that panned out. This and 15 inefficiency, the weekly opening price, and then the last line was this 15-minute rejection block that pretty much held price at bay. So far today have gotten below the yellow shaded area. So I will drop now to a 5-minute chart to be able to give myself early indication. Um, if dollar continues bullish, especially if it breaks through this purple shaded area here, then I will 100% be looking for sales when in the U.S. stock indices. Even though, like I said, the top technically is here, there's so much sell side below that that's kind of irrelevant. I could easily take a run down to here for like from where it's at. That's 70 points. That's a beautiful trade down to the the lower sell side. That is 130 something points. So I mean, those are enough for a week to be honest, as far as catching those types of points on Nasdaq. That's why Nasdaq was one of the first stock indices that I fell in love with because of the speed. But I realized that SPX was the cleanest as far as it didn't get all wild and do a lot of crazy, like random spikes. And not really random, but just unexpected. Just meaning like where I'm anticipating price to behave a certain way. And that anticipation a lot of times stems from what I would like to see for me to have an easy day. And so I had to be a little bit more realistic about what is possible with like Nasdaq and US 30, and from spending time with them and learning their characteristics, I've noticed that they'll even do the opposite of each other many days, which then makes it really hard for me to get a handle on what's most likely going to happen next and one or the other using the other. So that's why SPX has had been my go-to for most of the year, but things are starting to loosen up just to show the symmetry on the hourly chart so far. Actually, a lack of it. So since this low here, which was yesterday morning's low, look at where SPX is, look at where Nasdaq is, and then like I said, 30 have been showing a lot of weakness. So look at where it is. So it has breached that low already, whereas SPX and Nasdaq have not. So that's definitely something that I will be checking this layout to monitor and keeping that in mind for my analysis today. But like I said, so far the yellow shaded area has been traded below, and since the open, this was the first 5 minutes. So an outside bar bearish took out a swing high, took out some swing lows. We took out some swing highs, especially on the 5 minute swing high, swing high, swing high. So took out three swing highs, and then this also took out three swing lows on the way down. So going to see a lot of this indecision, I would assume, leading up into Powell first second of his interview. As soon as the man says good morning, or even before he says good morning, oftentimes I find the market do something wild. So I'm gonna stay on the mic. We'll watch this live. I won't need to speed into this stuff up. Well, I'll speed up actually from this part until when Powell speaks, and if anything of importance pops up, then I'll just be sure to unmute myself. I'll say that part. I'll leave that part regular speed, and then, um, like I said, once the fireworks start, I'll just get back on the headset. And so most of today won't really be sped up. It won't really need to be. I don't plan on being too long of a session. I just really want to come on here, do a live price commentary, and show the volatility from a Powell interview session with the with Congress. So I'm gonna mute now, and I'll be back in a few minutes. All right. So admittedly, was not expecting so much animation prior to Powell actually beginning the interview. But the reason I just removed those lines was because now everything has taken out that low from yesterday, all three of them. So exactly what I like to see. They're all moving in coordination with each other, like they're all in a synchronated dance together type of situation. So I like to see that. Nasdaq has engaged the sell side down here, and so that would have been where majority of any trades taken at the open, which this was a beautiful opportunity. Bumped the high here inside of this inefficiency, and then just straight lower to the sell side from there. Not something that I would have trusted though, with Powell speaking in a couple seconds here. So we'll see what happens there. Ideally, I would like to see the dollar get above this black line here and show some strength, willingness to get back up into that purple area. Like I said, any trading up to and through this purple area will for sure just be a continuation play to the downside in the US stock indices for me. There's a lot of room to the downside. Last week in particular was just a straight up week from jump. So since it opened up last week, it was just straight up. So every low of each individual day is a target, in my opinion, as far as downside objectives. And already seeing a little bit of a willingness to stay low here, and it could pick up some animation and run much slower, much faster. Not really sure what Powell is saying. Not really of too much interest to me. I'm really just concerned about what I'm seeing in the charts. So like I said, dollar above 102.609 with strength. For close above that, real close to or even above these highs, will bode well for then that follow through candle the next hour to then push into this range here. But dollar could also just consolidate as long as it doesn't turn around and start running lows. That would allow for the stock indices to continue reaching lower for sell side. There were reasons that I would have been able to believe that it may want to have trade higher, but again, there is a deep retracement in the near future, is what I have been calling for weeks now. And so usually when a sell-off happens, it's quick, it's fast, it's sudden, doesn't really give too many opportunities for people to get in. At least from my experience, that's what I've noticed. And so it could easily keep doing these types of situations where to get to an old low or an old inefficiency below price and maybe bounce around there, do a little retracement or consolidate, and that alone is going to have people that are typically only looking for buys jumping in at those prices, trying to guess that a bounce may happen there for the return back higher, and then just smart money pairing those new buy orders with more sales for them to continue to see this market run lower and going to a deeper retracement. So the next area sell side I'm watching is here. And then of course below that, we have this low from Wednesday, which is just above the low from Tuesday, which was something I did note as far as the CPI that came out. Well, no, not even the CPI. This was a rate decision, the interest rate decision. The volatility, although it did drop immediately with that report, and didn't even take out the previous day's low with all of the volatility that it dropped with. And so for it to have run that high, retrace and continue even higher made a lot of sense for in a hindsight perspective. But yeah, I don't really see any reason at all for me to be thinking buy. The only thing that, well, actually, that would be, it would take a lot for me to shift to buy. So one would be dollar showing extreme weakness, a big bold green candle running lows, reaching back into this range, looking like it's trying to slam through it. That would be one factor. Second factor would be for some sort of a large wick rejection that changes one of these candles from a green candle like this, a bold green, to a black candle with a very, very large tail at the bottom. And then for that candle to then deliver above a recent swing high. So currently the swing high that is recent right now, at least on the 15 minute, is this one all the way up here. So would technically need to see, like I said, a huge down close candle on a dollar and a huge wick rejection candle on the Nasdaq that basically sends price above this high. And so those would be two very demanding things I would need to see in price for me to then shift to any sort of bullish narrative. Right now, all I can really see is the characteristics I mentioned, where it gets to an area that people may think is support, bounce, consolidate. A lot of people start chasing this higher, and then all of a sudden, slam right lower and break all their hearts. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating as far as the agenda for today. I highly recommend looking at multiple time frames. So I do have other time frames that I'm watching on other monitors. I believe this is sufficient having just a split view between two different assets, but as you can see, I'm not exactly shifting time frames. The reason I'm not doing that is because, like I said, I have other time frames up on other screens. So definitely keep that in mind. But kind of maybe getting at beginning steps of what I was saying as far as looking for a buy. If this 15-minute candle flips black, right, and gets back above this sell side, trades into this inefficiency that's forming with a black candle, an up close candle, and then that next candle, right, can challenge this swing high here with cent price below there, then I could maybe start thinking buys to basically get back up to the weekly opening price and essentially the area I was looking at to ideally sell from was this H1 inefficiency up here. So just to show what that looks like on the actual H1, this range up here. So drag that out to today. And so that area right there would be ideal. If you notice from just the hourly perspective, there are no other inefficiencies in this leg down. So that's the last area of inefficiency that hasn't been rebalanced. And so I would like to see if price will deliver up into there, offer that a buy side in that zone there, and then see if I can look for a breakdown on a smaller time frame to get in a sell at a better price all the way up here and still targeting those same areas on the daily as far as that 15,144 midpoint of that 1 wick already breached that, and then I believe the next one is 15,043 and a quarter. So I will be more than satisfied with an entry from up there, taking it down to these levels again. Especially if I could leave something on to potentially get into here. Like I said, every little bounce, in my opinion, until it proves otherwise, it's just manipulation, and all I can really see is just continuation lower. See no reason for the market to turn around at this point. Dollar is not showing weakness, and if it does start to show strength, then this could definitely get a lot more animated to the downside. But again, with sales, they are quick and sudden, like the deep drops, but they also reach a higher time frame discount zone or level, and then it'll start to show what people will call exhaustion. Basically, the algorithm is just going to consolidate potentially at those areas, allowing for uncertainty to build up, for sentiment to shift, for people that may have wanted to chase it lower to now second guess that and wonder if maybe it's about to turn around, right? So there is confusion brought into the market when it's consolidating, and unless there's a better understanding of where and why a price is doing what it's doing, like where it's coming from, where it's going, and why, it would be difficult to really understand the the way to capitalize off of consolidations. Ideally, for me, it's stay out and then wait for some sort of a displacement to show its hand, and then pretty much play that direction. Like for today, for example, no, I didn't get in up here. Obviously, this would have been an ideal entry looking back in hindsight, but understanding order flow is bearish right now, and that there's still higher time frame objectives below that it could reach for. So I'm going to stick with the trend, even if there is some consolidation or even a retracement. There are levels within this drop here now that I'm going to be watching to see how does price respond at those levels to kind of help me gauge if order flow is shifting from bearish to bullish, or if it's still bearish and it's just offering another entry opportunity for lower prices. So that's pretty much where my head is right now. Just looking across the board again. So still weakness across the board, all three. So like I said, no reason as of yet to start to think that it may turn around and start running for highs. I'm anticipating every low that is making to be engineered lows, lows to entice people to buy and to place their stop losses below those lows, and then the algorithm will reprice below those lows quickly, taking all those stop losses and pretty much just introducing more liquidity to the marketplace. That's the name of this business. So guess I'll give it another 20 minutes. Hang out here till 9:30. Could also here just move sideways until about 9:30. The animation that happened at the open and then the continuation since with the interview with Powell. I believe it's a 90-minute interview. So I am interested to see if it will be some sort of one-sided direction for the duration, or maybe discontinuation, and then, like I said, a sideways movement until he's done. And then once it ends, closing remarks and such, and wherever the sentiment has been shifted to, and comparing that with whatever liquidity is left in the marketplace, that may be that next directional move for the afternoon today. So, for example, there are traders who got in here and their stop loss is most likely within this range or possibly above this swing high here. So, if the lunch session is going to run the stops from the profitable traders from the morning, then for sure this high would be a target this afternoon or like around London close, as well as the high of the yellow shaded area. And then potentially these highs left from yesterday could also be a target. Like I said, that hourly inefficiency up here is ultimately where I was anticipating price may try to get to this week just to completely balance out that whole range up there. This is the last area that needs to be balanced. And so if it could get up there, balance that, then continuation lower should be absolutely no problem. But dollar so has rejected at 609 currently with 47 minutes to go in this hourly. I'm gonna drop down to the 15-minute over here and see this chop. So dollar is in a ugly consolidation right now. And then I go down to the 5-minute here. So Again, this low bounced off of there. This low breached it, closed higher. Now, so far, with a little bit less than 2 minutes left, a bullish candle, still within this range and still underneath this sell side. And then just also looking at it from the 5 minute perspective. So there's this inefficiency there, but then there's also inefficiency here. There's a small one here, and I don't believe there's one here. I believe those are the exact same. So the low of this candle at the top there is 15,116 and a half. The high of this candle is 15,116 and 3/4. So this does trade into that wick. So there's no inefficiency here. So my interest would be if it can get above this sell side level here and this inefficiency up in here, if it can get above both of those and find some support and violate, for example, these two, this is high within the price leg, so this one is the one I'm most interested in. But again, there's no guarantee it's going to get up there. It could just be, like I said, enticing more buyers. Stop loss is going to be placed below here, meaning more sell side here, just above this sell side at 15,066. So we shall see within the next 30 minutes if this closes within this range as an inside bar. Maybe that next candle will bump these highs and then get busy going lower again. But looking at it from the 15 minute one more time, see how the 15 minute is going to close. So I am seeing a nice rejection as far as a nice big tail. Candle did not flip bullish though. So it's leaving this 15 minute inefficiency as well as it takes out this sell side. So I'm definitely still bearish with my analysis on which direction that this is going to be going in the near term. All these equal lows down here on the dollar. I would be willing to tolerate a spike down below these lows, and that similar situation right where I say I want to see a wick rejection, big tail, and then it ends up closing black. So something like that would be acceptable for me. Will actually like lend very well to the idea of this continuing lower, especially if I saw something like that over there in the dollar, and then after a continuation, like I said, up to that purple range there. So first level of resistance is the old sell side. So some sensitivity there, but not showing too much trouble to get through it. But again, gotta wait till the candle close to see the whole story. A wick above it into this inefficiency is still bearish. Like I said, I want to see this level as well as this inefficiency here be traded through with some emphasis to really get me to start to believe it's possible for at least a deep retracement or even a complete reversal higher. So trade it up into the high of it, and it's sensitive there as well. Back below the sell side here. Like I said, there's sell side liquidity resting below here now. It's officially a swing low, and so definitely believe that the algorithm will reprice down there to engage that sell side liquidity. But from the 1 minute perspective, could have viewed this as this low broken here, got above this high, but actually didn't get above the high until this candle here. So yeah, this wouldn't really matter. Plus, it's not really anything that would have caused me to think that's going to turn around here. Like I said, I'm still sticking with the narrative I provided. I also like to see how the 1 minute, look at the 1 minute bodies of the candles perfectly close and open at the high end of that range with this rejection lower. And so this one as well, perfectly the high so far is that sell side right there. So definitely like to see those types of signatures for a setup to run down to that low. Now back to the 5 minutes, so a little bit less than 2 minutes here. Dollar, like I said, is now running lower. So what would I be willing to tolerate? Run below here, and then a rejection higher. It will bode well for continuation lower in Nasdaq. Looking across the pond again. So Nasdaq is actually the only one that's still a bearish candle on the hourly so far. SPX whipped down and has since rejected, but again, there's 40 plus minutes left on this hour. And Dow Jones didn't really get too much lower, but it did break that low by a point or two, it looks like. And now it's just pretty much printing a complete opposite mirror image of the candle before it. So nice reaction at that inefficiency there, just above the old sell side. So not allowing a breach of both of those areas and actually rejecting them, good sign for this low being run out and that 15066 level being hit. Every bullish candle at this point, in my opinion, is going to allow for, like I said, this mindset that it has printed to low, lower time frame. Amateur traders are going to be chasing that every time it looks like it's going up. That's a buy, and then that's being paired right with smart money sales that are still understanding that there's probably a little bit more ways to go lower with this run down here. Essentially starting a little consolidation in a sense, whereas it stopped its momentum lower and it's volatile still, but it hasn't really gone anywhere. So pretty much it's trapped within the lower end of this price leg right now. So until it runs out this low and picks up some momentum and wants to get even lower than that, I would expect this consolidation here to stay in play. Yeah, so admittedly, I definitely was expecting more animation like this with Powell speaking as opposed to just before utilizing just the New York Open. But definitely makes sense in hindsight why allow for the gamblers to enjoy any of this drop. Why not do it early and then cause a little bit of confusion while Powell is speaking again? I don't know what he's talking about, what they're asking him, what he's answering. I just know that whenever that man has anything to say, it is an opportunity for volatility to be in the marketplace. So, with just over 6 minutes left on a 15-minute interval, dollar has breached that low, and so I'm looking to see if it wants to stay below that low. Ideally, this candle would snap back and it just would leave a tail down there. Doesn't even have to close bullish as long as that next candle then is rather bullish and reaching back up towards its high. That's just what I would like to see. All of this down here could just be accumulating the sell stops below here. So anybody that not and I don't think many people trade a dollar index, but anybody trading a dollar index that was long here in the buys, same idea. They will have their stop losses below this low here, and so this could be smart money accumulating those sell stops, pairing with buys, and then seeing it want to run higher. Like I said, into that range. That's going to be the ideal scenario for the continuation lower. Although they can both move lower together, it's not something I like seeing, but it definitely is a possibility. Also, could utilize the opening gap here from the week, that high or the midpoint of there before it starts to run back higher because it's been very choppy. So maybe this is just it finally starting to stretch out, stretch lower, find support, then get the strength it needs to actually just run up to the highs rather than continuing to be so choppy and back and forth. And it's another peak across the pond. So pretty much the same thing with 30. SPX starting to show weakness. So I like to see both of these at least doing the same thing, even if Dow Jones wants to get up to these highs or even into this little inefficiency here that is left. Um, that may be something that it needs to do on its own before continuing lower. But like I said, I like to see at least Nasdaq and SPX kind of doing the same thing. Give me confidence that it will be continuation in that direction. So, like I said, rather disappointing um event. Like I said, I wasn't anticipating so much movement before him speaking. Typically, is like as soon as the man says good morning, then stuff like this starts happening. Not the case today. Just saw a little continuation. That low was taken out with the next 5 minute interval candle, and then since then just sideways. Like I said, the more it moves sideways and every bounce, then there are people that are looking at this as it made the low for the day. This is support. I'm gonna just keep taking my chance and buying, and I'm gonna just hold until towards the London close or end of day, and by then it'll have started to travel higher. Very possible. That's a lot of times how these assets behave. There'll be a drop like this, for example, and then work its way back up. I just not really seeing that being the case today, as it's already utilized lots of premium arrays and found a lot of resistance in areas. So I'm anticipating, like I said, more run on sell side before seeing any type of a run back higher. Okay, so there's dollar digging into that opening gap for the week. More bounce higher in Nasdaq. So again, just even seeing that being where I'm at now, a couple years into this journey, I know how it was for me when I was new and before I had the understanding I do now about how the markets work. And down here with this bounce, and it's already been dropping so much already. Like, right, you had the drop yesterday, pushed higher, consolidated, takes out this low. I know the old me, instead of looking for a continuation lower, I'm looking for a reversal. And every time there was upward, movement in price, that would entice me to think like, okay, the move higher is starting. I need to get in. And so I'd oftentimes be buying at the high end when this candle was up close or it was black. I would be buying oftentimes up there. And then immediately once I press the buy button, the market does this. And so I'm kind of panicking, but I'm like, okay, you know what? This low should be protected. So I put my stop loss there. And then lo and behold, it just keeps digging and it never gives enough of a bounce to give me any confidence that it won't hit that stop loss. And so that's what I'm saying. It's definitely eye opening to look at it from a perspective of where's the market been and where is it most likely to go based off of the idea of liquidity being the main goal here, right? That the market is looking to engineer liquidity by shifting sentiment and looking to engage liquidity by running old highs and lows. And then inefficiencies help with that shifting sentiment because, like I said, currently below here and here, right? These two green lines and this blue one, below those two areas, prices in bearish order flow. But although it's in bearish order flow, it's not exactly taking out swing lows, right? But there aren't many swing lows, at least on this time interval of the 5 minute. Now, if this candle still has over 4 minutes, if it closes higher and never takes out this low, then there will be two swing lows here, one higher than the next. And that's also another signature for someone to be looking for a buy because there's a low and then there's a higher low. So kind of making it seem like, okay, the trend is shifting, right? And the uptrend is going to be starting here soon. But again, with the narrative and everything in play, um, so far I'm seeing that the dollar is giving that deep drop. But once again, I'll mention that as long as this high or the midpoint of this range holds up as support, it should then be able to, even if it doesn't run up to this high, as long as it doesn't violate, which I guess technically is violated the high, but that's why the midpoint is also going to be of interest because within this top portion of it, I want to see either a consolidation or it to show willingness to get back above that range. That little bit of movement alone would be enough as far as using it in analysis with Nasdaq to just aid with me analyzing a continuation lower. But like I said, any sort of violation of that midpoint getting into and below the midpoint of that range, um, then I definitely will have to revisit my my analysis at a later time. So meaning move to the sidelines and just allow for time to do its thing, let price deliver however it's going to deliver. There's no need to be looking at it and observing 24/7. That's why my trading window now is from about 8 to 11 o'clock, so about 3 hours max. And ideally, there'll be days where I can get in and within the first 15 to 30 minutes, see a setup, take a setup, take most of the position off and profit, right? So bank some profit in the account and then protect the entry. So move the stop loss to break even or somewhere that makes sense and profit. And then just let the market do whatever it's going to do for the rest of that session or that day or whatever with the remaining portion of my initial order on. So that's again where I'm working towards, right? Like that's like the target of where I want to be as far as why I even broke down my my New York session model into like a time window. So it's like it's things I'm looking for, but there's also a time window in which I'm looking for them. And so those two things have to line up, time and price theory, as ICT calls it. But so now with just over 1 minute left in this candle, so it has bumped the high of the previous 5 minute candle, but it hasn't really gone anywhere, right? So it's still possible for this to print as a swing low. And like I said, this kind of trend line idea to become a reality for some traders, at least on this 5 minute interval. And so we'll see the next minute, well, next 6 minutes, I guess, because it incorporate the end of this candle and then the next one, how that next one trades. Does that one then, right, show more willingness to get up here? I'm also liking how the midpoint of this wick up here is basically right around that old sell side. So now there's basically three levels all stacked that to me are areas that resistance could be offered. And so any type of displacement above those levels, right, leaving another inefficiency on the opposite side. So this one, the classification, as ICT says, is a sell side imbalance, a buy side inefficiency. So a SIBI, SIBI. So I would like to see a buy side inefficiency or a buy side imbalance, sell side inefficiency on the upside if it is to break through those three areas that I just mentioned. So I would then have lines just like this between the high and the low of candles, but they be black, just denoting that they're more going to be for support as opposed to resistance. But then they are oftentimes inverted. So even if, for example, like I said, if it can get through the sell side and this range, I would like to see if it will come back down to it and then this act as support as opposed to resistance. So that's one of the cool things about ICT's PD arrays is that all of them can be inverted. It's just about understanding the narrative and the order flow currently in place with a price delivery. But so almost a minute with 10 and almost a minute into this next 5 minute candle here. So this was confirmed as a swing low. So like I said, that trend line idea is building here. Dollar getting some momentum lower. Now it has traded through the midpoint. At this point, it's at about 75% almost of the range. So definitely looking like it may want to reach down to the low end of it. There is this low here, sell side below that. And then also low key looking at this shaded box here. The low of that was never actually breached, I don't think. Let me see. So 273 is the low there. This candle's low is 273. So this candle is actually the low, and I'm not sure why that is the low. That should be up here. Let me so go back. Should honestly be here then. This should be the low. Cause that is 12.15. That's 12. So yeah, that should be here. So okay. So actually, so that low had already been taken there. So focus is going to be back to just these purple lines here, and it can trade below here with a wick, like leave a tail down here and reject. It's still over 7 minutes left in this candle. So that's another thing too about time, understanding that I have to allow for the candle to close to complete the analysis, because within just the last 10 seconds of this candle, it could whip back above this area here and leave a tail, and then that would be that sort of rejection that I would like to see. But then also keeping in mind the U.S. stock indices, when they got somewhere to go, they got somewhere to go. So as much as I like to use the dollar as a sort of aid in my analysis when I'm trading them, I do have to keep in mind that they're not always going to be doing the complete opposite of each other minute by minute. There'll often be times where they'll do the same thing, and that's just because the indices aren't exactly going to um like break their their own hunt for liquidity just because of the dollar's sake. Now, when it comes to like the foreign currencies, like for example, I'll pull up the GBP USD and Euro USD. So seeing how as the dollar has been lower here on the same exact time interval, the 15-minute, this has moved higher, a nice 40 pips, 45 pips in GBP USD. In euro, that same right time frame that the dollar's been trading lower on the same interval. This is also up about 40 pips. So things like that. UJ has also been lower while dollar's been going lower. So it's a little bit more direct correlation. Also seeing gold moving higher since dollar's been moving lower. But with the US stock indices, they're a little bit different, different breed. They're gonna get to where they gotta go a lot of times, um, regardless of what the dollar is doing currently. It's more so about like the higher time frame perspective. And what I'm seeing right now, so traded below this swing low here, but still left this one open, leaving a nice tail so far with under 30 seconds to go on this candle. But again, for me personally, I won't be bullish until the bare minimum above this area here. I believe that this is like a ceiling in a sense that's going to keep price below it and have the sentiment allowed to be messed with here to engineer new sentiment, potentially, right? Shifting a mindset that no longer lower, higher now, which I said would then leave a lot of sell side liquidity below these lows in the form of stop losses from people that are chasing these buys right now. So I know I sound like a broken record in the sense, just pretty much repeating the same things. But that's because nothing's changed. Just reiterating the things of importance here. There, this can be complicated, and it has been complicated for me. And what I've realized was that I need to simplify it. The more I dug into ICT's concepts and also spent time, you know, back testing them, forward testing them, looking through old data to find repeating patterns and repeating phenomena that he's taught me. It's allowed for me to trust that given certain times and certain things that I'm seeing, just kind of be able to know what makes the most sense. And so it's not a no 100% guarantee of what I'm saying being the case, but it's just using old data from my experience and kind of filtering that through a probabilistic type of thinking. Like, okay, what makes the most sense here? From all the times I've seen price do what price does and other factors across the boards, different markets, fundamentals, stuff like that. Like, no day is going to be the exact same as any other day, right? No hour is going to be the exact same as any other hour. No minute is going to be the exact same as any other minute. But there are going to be patterns that repeat. And so I feel like that's one of the things that us as humans are pretty good at is pattern recognition. And so I think that as far as the markets are concerned, I have a pretty good analytical mindset and pretty good pattern recognition. Not like chart patterns that you could like Google and look for different type of animal patterns and stuff like that. Like no, none of that bullshit. I'm just speaking in terms of like repeating patterns, like human nature type of patterns, but market nature patterns. If you get what I mean by that. But so definitely over here on the right, dollar did violate the high and the midpoint. So the low end here, there's also sell side resting below that. Like I said, there's this low, then there are lows up in here. So as it is now engaging with the low end and showing some sensitivity there, with just about 2 minutes left in this 15-minute candle, I will go back up to the hourly real quick. And so remember I was saying something like this would be needed along with a huge rejection higher over here. Didn't get both of those plays, right? The dollar did its job as far as going lower, but this wasn't enough to trick me into taking a buy here because again, I spent enough time observing price delivery with certain characteristics in play to have an understanding of like what makes the most sense and what do I demand to see for me to shift from my current stance, which is the order flow is bearish, to okay, maybe I should be looking for a buy. I've been here, done this enough where I was a person, like I said, down here thinking it's made a low, thinking I'm about to catch this nice run all the way back up to these highs, right? That idea of there being exhaustion in the marketplace. I know there's a lot of people looking at this on a smaller time frame saying it's showing exhaustion, that the sell move is ending. Maybe they're looking at some sort of indicator to show momentum is shifting bullish or something like that. But what I'm noticing is as the dollar is still showing weakness, we have now breached this low there. Well, maybe the exact same price. So 15,076, 15,075 and a quarter. So did breach that low here. But as I'm looking at the dollar show more weakness below, like I said, there's still also this low down here, which is essentially the higher low of the week. So there's this low and then there's this low. And then below that, just getting into Friday's intraday's low. And then real quick, just scan through here again. So it has violated this potential order block there. Typically, that's not what I like to see anyways for order block. Don't want to see it just sit there and play around with it. Just open a gap from yesterday's trade into today. It was sitting above that as well. Also just violated that. Engaged the sell side here. And so on this layout, I'm looking to see well below this low here, which is Monday's low, which is what I'm saying is right here. So I'll shift this down to here. So it has also engaged that, but I do believe they're considering this as Monday's low. There's no Sunday daily candle, so this is essentially what that low is. So this 102.252 area, I'm gonna put an alert there so I don't have to come back here. And then just so Dixie daily low sell side. So I got that. And then just to look at the Nasdaq chart real quick. So SPX has officially fully gotten back to this old buy side area, which is an old daily high buy side. I won't go all the way to the right and look at that. That was a high from a long time ago, to be honest. But this sell side, where I'll be looking for on this layout. So Nasdaq has engaged both of these levels. So these were some 3 hour levels that I had marked up, but also on the hourly, going to be very similar. But this other midpoint of this tail down here, that 15,043 and a quarter, getting very close to that. And like I said, anything below that, this daily inefficiency there. And so going back to the New York session model. So like I said, breached that low. So anybody that was looking at this as potential support, what I understood was there was this obvious sell side that was still below it that hadn't been touched yet. So I was looking at this as just a consolidation before the next push lower. Did color outside the lines here on the 15-minute. Wicked back in though to close. And now seeing some sort of bullishness in the dollar, which I said doesn't take much as far as all of this drop didn't allow for any upward movement, just consolidation. So any upward movement in within the consolidation on the dollar should allow for lower prices. I do also like that the low of this candle here, so 15,082 and a quarter. The high here, 15,078 and a half. So there is a small little inefficiency being left there. I'm interested to see if that will be left or if that level will get an immediate rebalance. But for now, what I can do, actually, I'll just shift these lines so I don't have to add too much more. I'll just shift these lines to show though this little small range I'm talking about that these that's being left here. Right. So this little area up in there that's being left on this 5 minute as it's taking out this low. Like to see things like that. There was momentum as it took out that low. And like I said, as long as the dollar is respecting in a sense this low end tier, and even if it goes into consolidation and doesn't exactly pick up a lot of momentum higher, shouldn't be too hard for lower prices. So Dow Jones has actually traded into that area that I was mentioning and rejected again. So now back pretty much level to level with the previous hour. SPX has folded and started to go lower with Nasdaq. So like I said, I like to see that. That's why I've kind of given Dow Jones a break. It's kind of been doing its own thing. Kind of gets annoying when I try to use all three as far as like to help aid in the directional bias. I would like to see all three doing the same thing to give confidence that there will be continuation. When one starts to break that correlation, then it starts to bring a little bit of confusion on my end, especially with something like I said, like the dollar being so weak. Because easily these could just start to pop higher. I've seen that as well. So just a matter of being objective, understanding, like I said, when I'm looking for something and where I'm looking for it, and then understanding what to do when I see it. Oftentimes, what to do is just simply nothing. But then sometimes what to do is actually to enter a trade, and I don't want to have any sort of confusion, right, or any emotions involved with that. I want it to be mechanical, rule-based, systematic trading, and that's how I will get to being one of the best at what I do. Has to be like that. There's no other way. And so, a further push lower, that should have now engaged that 15,043 and a quarter level. So I want to see how it responds at this range here, at this level. If it wants to dig lower, like I said, that would then take my eyes to this daily inefficiency here. If it wants to show any sort of momentum below that, that's another like 70, 80 points or so lower right there. And that's typical characteristics of a sell-off. That still wouldn't be like even a full run out of last week's range. Like definitely get into the discount of it as far as if I just go to this layout here and I pull up this box. So from last week's range, this was a high, and then the low was here. So we actually are below 50%. Dug it into this range so far, 50%. So it is in the discount of that last week's candle. And then just to sum this all up real quick, I'll go to the weekly, and then you can see here clear as day. So it's so far an inside week, meaning that this week is trading within the range of last week. So at this point, anything is possible. As far as could just continue on the daily or the lower time frame to move sideways. It doesn't have to necessarily violate the high or the low of last week. It can definitely just trade within the range of it and create a smaller range, setting up for something potentially next week or the week after that to take out the high or low of last week. But so nice reaction there so far, as far as definitely showing sensitivity at that level. That is something that I like to see. If I have a higher time frame level identified, I definitely want to see at least some sensitivity, right? Which is exactly what I could qualify this as is some sensitivity. Um, Now that same idea though, as far as I'm not convinced that it's going to turn around, especially looking at the dollar, how it's found some support at the low end of that range. So I anticipate once again this just being a way to entice more people in the buys, and then I want to see this low ran out. And so once this low is ran out, I will end the recording and I'll get it to the video editing so I can post this to YouTube. Um, and I do hope that this was of value to someone. I didn't exactly take any trades, any paper trades, visible trades, then use the risk reward tool to show any potential opportunities that could have been capitalized on today. But that's sometimes what happens when there's high impact news coming, that it's better to be safe than sorry. So while I wasn't willing to get in ahead of the news, because typically what that would mean was, let's say I did get in here in this zone here, and then I would have had it. Initially, my stop loss would have been from the 15-minute time frame because it's a 15-minute range. So initially, my stop loss would have had to be above this candle here, like I said, this swing high. And so basically, I would have had to have most of my position off at this sell side here, which is, I mean, beautiful, right? That's almost a 4-to-1 on that trade. Or uh, I could have taken a piece off there, partial, and then left some on for this, which then bumps it to 6.4-to-1 risk reward ratio, which is dope. And then most of, if not all, would be for sure out by then. But again, this is also understanding that once Powell was about to speak, so at the close of this candle here, I would have had to have my stops at break even, right? Protecting my entry from me taking any loss. And so this would have been an example where it would have been okay because it did get so animated beforehand and it did reach this sell side before the interview actually began. But I've seen other scenarios where it'll have something like this and then the news pops and then immediately just comes and takes me out at break even, and then depending on the price action immediately after that, in my head could lead to some stupid ideas, some things called revenge trading out of FOMO, just because I'm thinking like, oh man, like I should have paid myself, I had so much profit open and I wanted to gamble and hold through the news, so I end up just making no money. Or even if slippage happens and they takes me out above where my stop loss is, and now I have a loss in my account balance when I was up so much. Like those types of things I've dealt with in the past, and the mistakes I make afterwards are usually holes that don't need to be dug, because trying to get out of them usually leads to just more trouble. So I'd rather play it safe than sorry. This is every week, every day, and it don't stop. I've been now since the beginning, well, since the end of last year, so since the last week of December, at least one video a week. Sometimes multiple, up to 5 or 6, I believe, some weeks. So have definitely been out here just showing um, repeatedly that these markets are going to move all the time, and it's just more or less about me having an understanding about when it makes the most sense for me to engage and to apply risk to try to, increase my net worth. So almost done here, like I said. I just want to see this low ran out. So basically, I'm gonna now put just this level to know this is potentially a swing low. Been informed here. Ideally, I would like to see that within the next 15 minutes. Price come down there, run that low, and that will end the session for me. Pretty much walk through why it's not a good idea to try to pick bottoms. Essentially, if nothing else was to be learned today, hopefully that was something that could have been of value to someone. Why picking bottoms and a bearish order flow price leg does not make much sense. They call it like trying to catch a falling knife, like with such momentum like this, without some obvious reversal signals, it just doesn't make sense to try to continue to take shots at, oh, okay, it made a low, let me buy, put my stop loss here, because that game right there, I've played it. I'm telling you, I've played it, and it's a loser's game. It's not very fun taking those unnecessary L's when looking back on it on hindsight. It's like, damn, if I just knew what I was doing, I could have targeted all those lows. Like I could have allowed for the retracement, maybe looked on a smaller time frame for some signatures of that continuation lower, and then I could have just been targeting those lows on scalps, right? Just getting paid that way, keeping it super chill, super simple, nothing crazy. And so, like I said, as it approaches this low, I'm going to be ending the recording. And so, the sooner the better, to be honest, just so that I don't have to keep talking, because nothing else to say at this point. Pretty much laid out everything for you. Um, and just waiting to see if it made sense, everything I was just saying, and if the market is going to show that it makes sense, or if it's going to all of a sudden just snap higher and start running for those highs. Which again, I've seen that type of stuff happen too. Like the dollar could easily in this next candle fold and just aggressively trade out of that range. That's also very possible. That's why again it's about planning probabilities. I like to be in and out. Don't want to be engaged for too long, to be honest. Don't see the point. And so we'll just go back to this layout just to see the hourly again. So very heavy on the hourly, very heavy on the daily, right? And then just to scan through the other ones. So SPX with a nice little bounce, but that's not anything again that's convincing me of a turnaround. Dow Jones now has traded all the way up to and filled in that inefficiency, but above this high is more or less my concern. If we can get above there and find some support, then possibly a reversal could be something in mind. But for now, sticking to the initial analysis, continuation lower, and every little bounce here is just enticing more people to chase it, leaving stop loss down here in the form of sell stops to then see those ran out and break their hearts. So hopefully within the next 10 minutes, we'll see that low, which is now officially a swing low because there's a higher low here and a higher low here. So now this is officially a swing low. It wasn't confirmed until this kind of closed with a higher low. And basically at this point, dollar back above the midpoint here. Yes, there's this inefficiency that could act as resistance, but short term, a push back above there should be a good sign for, like I said, just that one more push lower, taking out this one more low there, which will, like I said, for me be the end of the recording. So I did say 9:30, but want to provide more value by just showing with a little bit of patience here, why for me it's something that I'm confident in saying that I don't believe the lows that it's printing here are safe, even though it printed this low and it wasn't until 35 minutes later, right? 35 minutes later before it actually traded below it. So same thing here, as it shifts sentiment potentially, right? It's pretty much that same scenario though, where I had this low and that inefficiency there, which we had that rejection from. Now there's this low and this inefficiency, so it hasn't traded into that yet. That could act as resistance. This old low now could also act as resistance. So just to drag that out just a little bit more, right? So all of these levels in here are now potential resistance as far as like a ceiling to keep price at bay, keeping it within this range here, consolidating before that next push lower. But a spike up into that range, for those who don't know the importance of keeping these things in mind, could then look like, oh, okay, it's ready to go. But then all of a sudden, get something like this where it's a bullish candle for the majority of the duration of the interval, but then in the last minute or two, get that bearish rejection and closing lower. And now it's like that fear kicks back in, as far as that stop loss being here doesn't feel safe anymore. But then it gets down here, another bounce, euphoria kicks back in, there's excitement. Oh, okay, I was right, it is going higher. And then boom, finally hits that stop loss. Or if there is a stop loss, right? Because I've definitely been that guy as well to trade without stop loss. I don't recommend it. But so hopefully within the next 6 to 7 minutes, can see price just violate this low. And doesn't necessarily have to violate it. I just want to see it trade below that low, and that will be enough for me, like I said, to pretty much feel like I've at least added a little bit of value today, and in the recording, and get to edit in the video so that I can post it on YouTube for all the believers and the dreamers. Of course, shout out to y'all. Shout out to the homies that inspire me to be better each and every day. This is definitely a solo journey, but it's good to know that there are other people in the world that are fighting for something as well. I will consider those, my comrades or my people, my tribe. So almost there. So boom, gets to and through that low. So that's pretty much going to end the recording, like I said, and I'm gonna get to the editing. So I do hope that there was some value here.